As we saw in our last video, hurricanes are one of our biggest threats we face here in America, and I recommend you go check that one out first if you haven't already. In this video, things are going to be a little different, and we are looking at the top 10 financial natural disasters in the world. Let's get started. We start the list off in the southern hemisphere, where a 6.5 magnitude earthquake occurred in the town of Christchurch, New Zealand in 2011. The area was still recovering from another major earthquake from just months before, which added to the trouble. Vast damages to roads, bridges, homes, buildings, the energy infrastructure, along with soil liquefaction, racked up costs and slowed rescue efforts in the country's third most populous city. The original estimate of the total damages is around $30 billion, but repairs and construction are still taking place and those numbers could get higher. Number 9 takes place in Europe, where at the end of December of 1999, two major windstorms hit the area within a 4-day span. Cyclones Lothar and Martin tore across France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany, Spain, Italy, and Switzerland with wind speeds measured at over 100 miles per hour, and with the force of a Category 2 hurricane. Almost half of the buildings in all of France received roof damages. Power lines were out everywhere. Millions of trees were uprooted from the ground, and added storm surge brought in flooding to some areas. The cyclones totaled $34 billion worth of damages. But those cyclones were not the only major disaster that took place in 1999. The Izmit earthquake in Turkey was a magnitude 7.6 and brought with it maximum intensity. It could be felt from 100 miles away, destroyed 150,000 houses and buildings, oil refineries, automotive plants, major transportation tunnels and bridges, a Navy headquarters, started a petroleum refinery fire, and produced a tsunami in the aftermath. It is estimated that anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000 people died, and another 50,000 were injured. All in all, the cost came out to $35 billion. In 2004, a 6.6 magnitude earthquake hit the biggest island in Japan. Over 100,000 people were left homeless. Major railroad tracks and highways were shut down for repairs. Deathly landslides occurred, and significant issues with energy and technology infrastructure were the results of the earthquake, along with the evacuation from multiple villages for over 2 years. The total of all those damages? $38 billion. Turkey isn't the only place where earthquakes and tsunamis mix, and the duo popped up again in Chile in 2010. The 8.8 earthquake caused intense shaking for 3 minutes, and the tsunami that followed was powerful enough that over 50 different countries had warnings out for possible impact. The earthquake knocked out power to over 90% of the Chilean population, and aftershocks continued for a year after the original. A fire at a chemical plant, temporary closure to the international airport and the major shipping port, over 1,000 landslides, and 370,000 destroyed homes were all caused by the disaster, which totaled up $40 billion in damage. The 2011 monsoon season brought torrential flooding to Thailand, which lasted for a year in some areas. Over 13 million people were displaced, and 65 out of the 76 provinces in Thailand were considered flood disaster zones, along with almost 8,000 square miles of farmland. It is considered one of the worst floods in recorded history in terms of water and people. The flooding crippled the manufacturing industry and supply chains, and even led to a global shortage of hard drives. The total damage was $50 billion. Another maximum intensity earthquake struck Naples, Italy in 1980 as a 6.9 magnitude. 3 shocks in different areas of the country resulted in 300,000 people left homeless, and around 10,000 dead or injured. Hundreds of towns received damage, along with major manufacturing facilities, railroads, highways, and historical buildings. Cleanup took a long time and required the assistance of the United States and West Germany, and those costs were $58 billion. The top three are three of the biggest natural disasters to happen in our history. And it begins with an 8.8 earthquake in China back in 2008 that spanned over 150 miles, while being felt from over 1,000 miles away. Aftershocks continued for months, and the earthquake caused the most landslides ever recorded at over 200,000. It left somewhere between 5 and 100 million people homeless, over 300,000 injured, and caused around 70,000 deaths. The damage reached multiple surrounding countries and cost China $200 billion. Number 2 occurred in 1995 when a 6.9 earthquake shook Japan. The quake destroyed 400,000 buildings, 80% of one of their biggest ports, major highways and subways, and it took over a year and a half for the economy to catch back up to speed. Over 1 million volunteers came from all across the world to help out however they could. The final payment for the earthquake damages sits at around $250 billion. The top spot on our list is hard to forget, and we don't have to go far to find it. 16 years later, Japan was hit in 2011 by a 9.0 earthquake and tsunami combo. It was the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in Japan, and the tsunami reached heights of over 100 feet, speeds over 400 miles per hour, and traveled 6 miles inland. The most serious destruction occurred at one of their biggest nuclear power plants, which released radioactive material and affected hundreds of thousands of people alone. It is believed that at least 20,000 people passed during this event, 350,000 were displaced from their homes, and over 1 million were left without temporary access to clean water. Another 4 million people did not have any electricity, as well as 700,000 damaged buildings, all Japanese ports being closed, and an oil refinery catching fire. This one-of-a-kind event brought the final cost to over $350 billion. There is not much that can be said after a list like that, so I will go ahead and talk about some other honorable mentions. These are all terrible disasters that have occurred, but the measurement of economic cost is nearly impossible for many reasons. The 2019-2020 Australia bushfire season was unlike any previous one. 35 million acres of land was burned, and it affected over 3 billion animals. Air quality dropped to hazardous levels, the tourism industry was hit hard, and 80% of the population was somehow affected by the bushfires. Over $300 million of donations poured in from individuals, businesses, and governments in support of Australia, and it is the costliest disaster in their history. Back in 1997, Southeast Asia faced their most severe haze of all time. It affected the health and travel of people in 7 different countries and expanded over 1 million square miles. It was a drier season than normal, and that, along with the increase in slash and burn techniques within the agriculture industry, were the main causes of this event. Multiple countries faced damages and costs in air, land, and sea transportation, construction, tourism, and the agricultural industry. Lastly is the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami, where the epicenter was located off the coast of Indonesia. After a 9.2 earthquake began, the entire planet moved, and tsunami waves grew to over 100 feet high. Over $14 billion in donations were given, but not before over 225,000 deaths took place in 14 different countries, and more environmental damage was done than can be calculated. The fishing industry in many countries was destroyed, and even though the economic damage may be small, this is one of the most devastating natural disasters that has ever taken place. And now you know. I hope you enjoyed the video, and now go enjoy your day. I always appreciate any kind of feedback for these videos, and a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated. In our next video, we'll be taking a look at some of the biggest nuclear events to ever take place. I'll see you there.